Even as the government stands ready to strengthen Singapore's social safety net, given the greater challenges ahead, it must be done in a way that does not create new problems for society. Prime Minister Lee says solutions should be pragmatic and make a real and sustainable difference to targeted groups such as older as well as low-wage workers. Gwyneth Chia with more.
Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong says Singapore has been building up its social safety net over the last 15 years. As the economy matured, wages stagnated, and workers found it harder to move on to another job if they became unemployed. Spending on social programs has tripled over this period. However, they weren't enough when COVID-19 hit, and the government had to draw on past reserves to fund emergency measures such as the Job Support Scheme to stave off retrenchments. But Mr. Lee says these measures cannot continue indefinitely, and Singapore has to start thinking about the level of social support the country will return to when the pandemic is over.
We should take some time to assess the landscape after COVID-19 to see how things unfold and what specific problems develop. We must keep an open mind as we build and improve on the systems we have and consider solutions that can work in our context. It's not just floating ideas like minimum wage or unemployment insurance, but assessing their impact carefully. Who wins and who loses within the workforce? How will our SMEs or the public be affected? We must identify pragmatic solutions which will make a real and sustainable difference and give people justified assurance that when they need help, they will get the help that is relevant to them. And it must not create new problems in the process, for example, by eroding our spirit of self-reliance.
Taking the example of older workers, Mr. Lee says solutions like unemployment insurance will offer them at best temporary relief if they lose their jobs. A better option would be to retrain and upskill them so they can continue to be of value to their employers and less likely to be made redundant. The Prime Minister also says that as a matter of principle, social safety net programs should be funded from current revenues.
After several generations of frugal prudence, we have built up significant reserves. And because we have taken such an approach consistently, decade after decade, in this enormous monster storm, we have been able to draw on past reserves and fund our essential budget packages and help people on a very big scale. Now the opposition says, show me how much we have in the reserves before I decide whether I support your budget and tax plans. Let's have a look at the money. Basically, they're asking, I have something in the bank already. How much of that can I touch? This was not the attitude of our forefathers, the founders who were building for the future, but the attitude of inheritors who think they have come into a fortune and want to consume the fruits of their predecessors' labors. And this is fundamentally the wrong approach. How much reserves are enough or too much? There can be no good answer to this question. The future is unknowable. We have no way to tell what may hit us from out of the blue.
Mr. Lee says the pandemic is an example of this uncertainty, which has led to a budget deficit of more than $70 billion.
Therefore, we should not think of ourselves as inheritors, spending what we have been lucky enough to be endowed with. Rather, we should take the attitude of founders, even though we may be third, fourth, or fifth generation in reality, but we should think of ourselves as founders for the future generations. Whatever reserves we have, big or small, let us not think of touching them in normal times. They are our rainy day fund, our 棺材本. In Chinese it sounds better, because that's a coffin fund. Every year we live within our means. And whenever we are able to, we add a bit more to the rainy day fund to make ourselves a bit more secure for when it really pours. And that is a way to build Singapore for the long term and secure the future for our children and grandchildren.